I've spoken previously about how at Winchester we aim to implement educational practices based on robust research. For example, the work we've been doing on adolescent mental health and well-being is informed by a well-established body of evidence. And as we implement it here, we're working closely with experts such as Dr. Jack Andrews, a fellow at the University of Oxford in developmental science and mental health, whom many of you heard speak at our parent seminar at the end of last term. That body of research provides a robust framework for well-being built on three key elements: developing autonomy, competence, and relatedness, fundamental principles that we're putting into practice in our new program of study skills. A study skills program that teaches highly effective study habits has an obvious purpose: to improve learning. No surprises there, and a good thing in itself. But there is a second, less obvious objective. Explicitly teaching pupils practical study techniques empowers them. They quickly learn that excellence is not a question just of innate ability, but also of specific behaviours and habits that can be learned, rehearsed, refined. Putting this understanding into practice generates success, which drives confidence and motivation, which in turn drives further success, creating a virtuous circle. Study skills can thus be a vehicle not just for academic achievement, but for developing autonomy and competence, and that drives well-being. So this term, our first year and fourth year pupils have met every Saturday morning for study skills sessions with their tutors. Pupils have been very receptive, and we're already seeing them make better decisions about how they study and apply techniques that really work. We start with some very basic things like setting up a work area which is well organised and conducive to study. Pretty obvious starting point. But fairly soon we move into how the human brain works and how they can leverage that knowledge into efficient and effective study practices. Many of these ideas are somewhat counterintuitive, but once you understand the underlying principles, they can be transformative. To give you an idea of what the program involves, let me debunk 4 common assumptions about how to study. So, number 1, to learn best, you should focus on the techniques that work and feel best for you. Appealing, but wrong. Pupils who focus on the methods that feel the best are probably employing ineffective techniques. Why? Well, multiple research studies have investigated the study techniques of university students and found that even the most committed students defaulted to the most ineffective methods. They spent hours highlighting, rereading, summarising information. Doing this, they feel productive and in control, but they don't learn much. Instead, more frequent bursts of practice testing at intervals generated far higher results. It won't feel as good. It will feel much more strenuous, and you'll get more things wrong, which isn't fun. But it's a bit like going to the gym. A long walk on the treadmill might feel good, but 10 minutes of jump squats, however uncomfortable, will get you fitter. So in summary, you can see why students might gravitate towards ineffective techniques. So we need to teach them clearly that the brain has to work hard for studying to be effective and to welcome that discomfort as a sign of good learning. Myth number 2, performing well in class is a good sign that you're ready to perform well in an exam. Wrong again. Short-term performance shouldn't be confused with long-term learning. Just because you can remember or do something now doesn't mean you'll retain it for later. Let me give you an example. Researchers compared 2 groups of pupils. One was given a full 30 minutes of study and the other 3 10-minute bursts. Now, the 2 groups performed similarly when they were tested shortly afterwards, but when they were tested after a longer gap, those who studied in short bursts did far better. So immediate performance is not a reliable guide. But here's where it gets interesting. The results were even more pronounced if you interleaved the content, which means mixing up new content with older related work. In this case, those who studied one thing for a long time did much better initially than those who mixed it up, but they did much worse later when they were tested. So once again, those early gains which might have given them confidence were misleading. So we need to teach pupils that the structure and challenge associated with study is more important than the overall amount of time that you spend studying. Myth number 3, the best thing you can do is study under the direction of an expert teacher. Well, why is this wrong? Lessons work best when led by an expert teacher, But study is most effective when the pupil is in control, because adolescents in particular are motivated by autonomy. That's true in their academic studies and in anything else, which you've probably noticed by now as parents. Setting up loads of revision sessions directed and supervised by teachers sounds ideal, except that it's likely to encourage passivity and inadvertently undermine motivation. To thrive, young people need opportunities to make their own decisions, experiment with different ways of working, and learn what works best for the subject, for the type of content, and for themselves. And this means we'll support pupils best not by setting up infinite teacher-led study sessions, but by showing them a range of effective study techniques, explaining why they're effective, and then giving them time to think for themselves. The same principle extends to the role of parents in supporting their children. Again, the research clearly shows that overhelping adolescents erodes their sense of autonomy, leading to disengagement and learned helplessness. So what can you do to support your child? Offer support, but let them be the expert. Ask lots of questions. Ask them about how they're structuring their time or their study environment. Get them to talk about the content, asking how and why questions, so they have to work hard to remember the content, analyze it, explain it to you, and make connections. If they get stuck, ask them about the resources they have to draw on, or help them ask focused questions directly to their teachers. In the end, it's self-evident that in order to raise independent learners, we have to let them have some independence. All right, myth number 4, getting things right is a sign of effective study. This seems obvious, but once again, it's wrong. If you're getting everything right, then you're focusing on content you already know, satisfying but pointless. Effective study focuses on areas of weakness so you can improve. Now, if you haven't thought this through, you might easily feel discouraged if you're testing yourself and you're only getting maybe 50% right. But in fact, you're probably learning more effectively than your friend who's getting 85% right. Growth comes from challenge. And once you truly understand this, you'll be confident to make better study choices, even if they seem to generate worse results in the short term.